Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
The crisis was a result of Wall Street running amok. The committee will be paying close attention to whether financial regulators try to weaken these important reforms, and we will be keeping an eye on the big banks and their activities.
So what does this mean for you and your family and for our economy? Here to weigh in on this is host of Varney & Company on the Fox Business Network, Stuart Varney. Hey, Stuart. They love you.
We're going to want a studio audience next.
I want this audience for my show today.
Right. So she has the stern warning for Wall Street. What'd you make of her agenda?
She wants revenge. She's come flat out with it and said, I want revenge. She says, I'm going to do to you, as in the banks, what you did to us. She's going to turn this committee, which she now chairs, into a court which is going to try and punish bankers. You're going to see a lot of hearings where bankers, leading bankers, will have to stand up, raise the right hand and take the oath. That's very bad PR for the banking industry, and Maxine Waters is doing that quite deliberately. She will harass the president. She'll go after Deutsche Bank, which financed some of the Trump organization's business. She'll go right after Deutsche Bank, try to expose and harass the president. She will call for new taxes on Wall Street. I think she's going to turn that committee into a kind of a sounding board to establish the Democrats' financial policies going into 2020. But I don't think she has any real power to affect the economy, because any new rules or suggestions that she has can be reversed by the Republican Senate and or vetoed by the president.
Which is a lot of the people that were responsible for 2008 are retired, gone, or fishing somewhere. Where did she dust this speech off from?
Well, she doesn't like the banks. She blames the banks for the crash 10 years ago. I think that's regurgitating old ground, frankly. But that's what she's going to do. You'll see an endless set of hearings where the banking industry, Wall Street, rich people are pilloried in front of this committee. And don't forget, AOC is on that committee as well.
All right. Stuart, somebody in the audience has a question. That guy right there with the gray sweater.
Yes, sir.
What's your name?
Tom Burrows.
Hey,
Sir.
Tom.
Hey, Brian. Because it is the beginning of the year, and with Maxine Waters coming up with the ideas about reform I could take, trying to eliminate, change things that the president has done.
Yep.
With the money that's going to inflow into the market, I mean, can she really affect the market? I mean, we got people who are retiring.
Right.
I mean, I'm a retired firefighter, but we got guys retiring this year. We have guys coming into the job who are just starting at 401s, 457s.
Great question. So
IRAs.
can she impact the market?
No, I don't believe she can. Tom, that's a very good question, Tom, because this is the time of year when people decide where their retirement money is going. You got a 401k.
Right.
Now you make the decision, do I put it into stocks or bonds or cash or a bunch of everything. Maxine Waters will not be able to affect the stock market. She may affect the bank stock price of a specific bank, maybe Wells Fargo, perhaps, but the banking industry, the market as a whole, no.
I'd love to see her investigate. A lot of people curious how she got so rich and why she doesn't live in her district.
That's another story, Brian.
Right.
It is Friday, the 18th of January of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. That's right, folks. We're opening up the tavern. The Speakeasy will be in full force and fully staffed. Some of you will require the French 77, and some of you have already been prescribed other spirits, and we're here to oblige, so please feel free. Okay, well, the reason why we're in the, drowning of sorrows, not just because of what is happening in the news and the world. That's tough enough, isn't it? So, I don't know. I feel that I'm now in this almost diary chronicle of this, drowning of sorrows. And rest assured, I don't really drink, so I'm not doing it that way. But drowning in tears, yes. One of the strategies outside of, the Buddhist practice, the most common known Buddhist practices of quiet and contemplation and conscious intent, mindful work, those sorts of things. There is also another, I don't know if it's Western or what, but a practice in which you stand tall with your chin up. I've been trying that, and yesterday, as I stated on social media, and thank you folks for reaching out, I'm not as messed up as I might seem. I'm able to function in the world. But I really just wanted to curl up in a ball yesterday and just cry. The idea of standing tall with my chin up, I couldn't do it. I could not stand up that tall even. And, so it's a new experience, and as I stated before, I don't want anyone to go through this. So I actually thought I had made amends with this whole aspect of what it is to live in this transient existence we call life. But it was mostly a very selfish consideration about, me. And I've had loved ones pass. And I've had dear, dear friends pass. I've seen human brutality that is, I wouldn't want anyone to imagine it. Is that why I wrote about it? Well, and I know what humans are capable of doing to other humans, and I know how life can be measured in beauty, but it can also be measured in brutality. And so I've been around the block a few times. But this, I'll reiterate, I was absolutely unprepared for. And who does prepare for it? Maybe if they know about it ahead of time, and they're making contingency plans for comfort and all that. But when you're a 41-year-old adult, I can see where you probably wouldn't want to burden people with your physical ailments. I mean, it's only common not only in my family. Now, my son wasn't an athlete. He did box. I got to tell you, he was a good boxer. And he taught boxing classes and whatnot. But, when I played sports, you did not want anyone to know you were injured because, not for a number of reasons. One is that the opponent would take advantage, but also someone might take your place. So you play through this and you don't let anyone know. Then you get to be an older guy and you've got this muscle memory going on about, if I let anyone know that I'm injured when I'm applying for a job, they won't hire me because they'll think I'm going to use that for a workman's comp claim. Yeah, back in the day, if you said that you had had knee surgery, they wouldn't hire you. I know. I can't tell you how many jobs I was turned down specifically for that. So you learn not to use your physical ailments as an excuse for any reason. You don't let anyone know that you have them. And my son, I guess, bought into that too. So that's why it was so abrupt, sudden, and a little surprising. At the time, everything makes sense now. We're never able to step outside of ourselves and watch the narrative like in a movie. Afterwards you do, and you're looking at it, and you go, wait, don't open that door. And but you're in the midst of it. You open the door because you're not outside yourself looking at the narrative. Okay, enough of that. Boy, Stuart Varney hates Maxine Waters, doesn't he? Oh, the whole Fox business, Fox audience. They have an audience. It's just like Howard Beale. Oh my God! And they hate her, and I know why. Because Maxine Waters is black, and she doesn't take S from anyone. And good for her. And I'm trying to figure out, what was the complaint again that Varney listed there? All these banks like Wells Fargo. She's going to punish Wells Fargo. Well, damn right. I mean, what is he talking about? And that the banks are somehow mistakenly blamed for the bubble and crash that put us into a depression that was only, I think, equal to by the Great Depression that FDR lifted us out of. But and the people are clapping, and you got a retired fireman. I'm a retired fireman. And what's going to happen to my 401k? Hey, buddy, don't you know that 401k is worth nothing anyway? Just by dint of the fact it's a 401k. They used to actually have to give you retirement. And now you got a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of that. Well, I'm sorry for laughing at you, buddy. But it's another one of those, and I'm going to trademark this. I told you so. Not just me, but it's interchangeable. All of us have been saying I told you so for decades. And the only problem is now the dikes are failing, and we're being inundated terribly. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays? We don't drown our sorrows here, folks. No, we float on top and we revel in it. The rising tide of teacher strikes is finally exposing the corrupt privatizing impulse behind the charter school agenda. Another I told you so, trademarked. A U.S. grand jury indicted 4 Audi managers in the VW emissions data cheating scandal. Remember that? And 4-term GOP Representative Tom Marino of Pennsylvania announced he will retire. Just 2 weeks after Speaker Nancy Pelosi took the gavel back for the Democrats. Oh, was he running some part of the Trump campaign? No wonder he's trying to skip out of town. After the break, we move to the chef's table where Facebook blocked accounts linked to Russian state-owned Sputnik. Well, they oughta. And maybe Sputnik didn't pay the amount on the account that they signed with them. Maybe that's what the problem is. We'll have to see. And an Austrian data privacy activist filed complaints against Apple, Amazon, and 6 other tech firms. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. I did want to mention here, just before we get into this next segment of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is to an addendum to this chronicle of grief that I seem to have created here at the beginning of the show, is that one thing that I do know, and it's a constant, is humor can cure you, and it can also cure the world. So it's been hard to be humorous, and it took me a little while to get back in the swing of things with the show. And or just, anything. It almost seemed almost was unseemly to be laughing. But you know what? That's what really a celebration of life is. And celebration of life is being able to laugh at yourself and the world. So I am doing that too. All right. If you go to the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, on the rightish of the page is the chat room link monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you. Oh, check out her show on Saturday. She has shows, actually, on Saturday. The first one being At the Table with Kelly Lincoln, and that is at 3 p.m. on the West Coast. That would be 6 p.m. on the East Coast. And then a few hours later, she teams up with Ricky May, and they sit at the Roundtable Roundhouse Power Hour, and that begins at 9 p.m. on the West Coast, midnight on the East Coast, for a full power hour. Indeed. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the contribute button. Please do become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. Your recurring contribution keeps our lights on and the modem blinking, and thank you for that. Your generosity is direly needed. We're unable to do this without you, so thank you, thank you, thank you. You can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. You can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, and I post the show notes and links diary about 10 minutes before showtime on Daily Co's, where I am found as Justice Putnam. Wow. You can follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and podcasts are found on Speaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, iHeart, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Okay, they're everywhere. They're on like Apple tablet, cloud, something. It's all over the place. Okay, okay, all right. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy comes our way by the Independent Media Institute, and Jeff Bryant penned this. The teacher strikes portend something a bit larger, but they also expose this corrupt privatizing impulse behind the charter school agenda. Now, the Los Angeles teacher strike, let's be clear. I mean, these are huge. But the Los Angeles area teacher strike, it's not about pay. It is simply about supplies. And apparently they're going to call out the cops and bust heads. That's what they do. And also class size. I mean, it's just because, remember, when you privatize something and you put in the profit motive, how is profit made? Charging for services and then denying some of those services. That's how you make a profit. You say you will do the job for so much. You factored in all of materials and everything else and labor. And then you, do what they do. Pull back on services and you keep the money. That's how profit is made. Versus something that's in the commons where... I mean, are you really going to charge your neighbor for that quarter cup of sugar? Really? Are you that petty? There are some who are. But they're not known as good neighbors, are they now? And ergo, charter schools are not good neighbors in a representative democratic republic. Next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, is Out of Reuters by David Shepardson. A federal grand jury in Detroit yesterday indicted 4 managers at Volkswagen's AG luxury Audi unit as part of the U.S. government's investigation into the German automaker's diesel emissions cheating scandal, where VW admitted in September of 2015 to secretly installing software in nearly 500,000 U.S. vehicles to cheat government exhaust emissions tests, and then pleaded guilty in 2017 to felony charges. In total, 13 people have been charged in the United States, including the 4 Audi managers: Richard Bauder, Axel Eiser, Stefan Niersch, and Korsten Nagel. All worked in Audi's engine development division in Germany, and that would be development. But in the German accent that I'm affecting right now, that would be development. Bauder was head of Audi's diesel engine development department. A Justice Department spokesman said none are in custody and all are believed to be in Germany. Will they be extradited? Makes the mind reel in wonder, doesn't it? Lawyers for the 4 could not immediately be identified because they're probably in Germany, too. The government previously indicted 1 former Audi manager in July of 2017, Giovanni Pamio. Oh, good. Blame it on the Southerners. Oh, did you know that Germans hate people in the Mediterranean? They think that they're lazy, just lolling about in the sun. Just let you know. The new indictment is a significant expansion of the government's criminal probe. The 4 managers are charged in a 12-count indictment with conspiring to evade U.S. emission standards in diesel vehicles sold in the United States with 3.0-liter engines. They are accused of wire fraud, violating the Clean Air Act, and conspiracy. Well, let's see. In today's new a-go-go government of Trump, wire fraud? Oh, they were just doing established business practices. Violating the Clean Air Act? Well, that's all a hoax anyway. Liberal pipe dream. And conspiracy sounds like collusion, and collusion is a hoax. Well, speaking of a hoax, the law is the law. And it moves irrevocably. U.S. prosecutors previously charged former VW Chief Executive Officer Martin Winterkorn, who remains in Germany. 2 other former VW executives have pleaded guilty in the investigation and are in prison. Germany does not typically extradite its citizens for prosecution in U.S. courts, and it makes you wonder why. Former Audi chief executive Rupert Stadler was not among those indicted. He is being investigated in Germany for his alleged role. VW in October terminated Stadler's contract against the backdrop of a criminal investigation and whether he was involved in emissions cheating. Martin of Share Blue Media brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Now, this Republican Tom Marino out of Pennsylvania, he was making the rounds in Trump's stead a lot during the campaign here in the midterms. And I must say, he campaigned relatively hard for his own seat, and it makes you wonder why he's skipping town. It's not just because Nancy has the gavel. All right, let's be clear about that. And good riddance, as far as I'm concerned. Four-term Rep. Tom Marino announced he will leave Congress to take a job in the private sector just 2 weeks after Nancy Pelosi took the gavel back for the Democrats. As of January 23rd, 2019, I am officially stepping down from Congress, Marino said in a statement. So I don't know how there's any kind of accent in a written statement, but it happens here on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. He said he is going into the private sector, but did not say who he will be working for, and I figure it'll be a bottom feeder because that's really the personality this guy is. Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee spokesperson Jared Smith linked Marino's retirement to his new role in the minority party of the House. It is no surprise that on the same day that House Republicans voted against ending the Trump shutdown for the 9th time, one of their members had decided he's had enough, Smith said. While we certainly didn't expect the first Republican retirement to happen just 2 weeks after they were sworn into the minority, Tom Marino is just the tip of the iceberg. Marino's announcement comes exactly 2 weeks to the day after Nancy Pelosi reclaimed her rightful position as Speaker of the House and ushered in a new House Democratic majority. Rather than fulfill the commitment he made to the people of Pennsylvania to serve as their member of Congress in the new Republican minority, Marino decided to quit and go home. Now, Marino is not even the first Republican to flee Congress after the 2018 wipeout. In the Senate, both Senators Pat Roberts of Kansas and Lamar Alexander of Tennessee announced they will not be running in 2020. And Marino's soon-to-be former district is solidly red-leaning. Trump won it in 2016 by 33 points. And Marino won re-election in 2018 here by a 66-34 margin. Wow, he's hightailing it out of town. I don't think it's because he's suddenly been emasculated by being in the minority party. There's something else going on here. And this is the first House member to hightail it out of town because you've had two senators who are saying they're not running again. With Marino's exit, Trump loses one of his most loyal foot soldiers in Congress. Marino voted with Trump almost 98% of the time, clearly unwilling to stand up to any of Trump's whims. But after voters from coast to coast rejected the policies of Trump and his congressional lackeys, Marino is no longer interested in fulfilling his duties, and I also think it's because there are indictments coming down. And didn't he run a campaign for Trump? Yes, he did. And were there maybe possibly fudged polls, money spent, money pocketed, collusion with a hostile foreign power? All right, let's get to our break while we ponder those considerations. And when we come back from the break, we will go through weather from around the world, and oh my God, is there weather. And then we'll go through some other news from around the world, and then we're going to finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, Bleak Street. Much like his previous movie, Moonlight, director Barry Jenkins manages to create a beautiful, multi-layered movie out of a sad story. Set in 1970s New York, despite being named for the famous Memphis Blues Boulevard, and based on the novel by James Baldwin, If Beale Street Could Talk tells the tale of a young African-American couple, Fonnie and Tish, as they fall in love and create a family, as tragic events are about to befall. Specifically, it involves Fonnie being falsely accused of rape, just as Tish learns she's pregnant with the couple's first child. The Beale Street reference is symbolic, referring to where every black person was born, according to Baldwin. The legend that Louis Armstrong was born there is apparently just that, however. The film stands as a meditation on the struggles of African Americans in a justice system where the odds are stacked and makes personal the effects that mass incarceration has on that community. It is uncomfortably effective, especially as the film is set 40-plus years ago, and these are still contemporary issues. Since this is based on the work of James Baldwin, it's not a spoiler to say that Beale Street won't have a happy ending. In anyone else's hands, the story could come across as a soap opera, but Jenkins' deft direction, including the shooting of longtime collaborating cinematographer James Laxton and the work of his actors, prevent that. Specifically, Stephan James, a 25-year-old Toronto native, best known for his work in Amazon's Homecoming, shines as Fonnie. Likewise, Regina King, who recently won a Best Supporting Actress Golden Globe, is incredible in her role as Tish's mother, who tries her best to clear Fonnie's name. If Beale Street Could Talk is a forceful gem of a movie, a worthy follow-up to Moonlight, and one that will likely be similarly remembered during awards season. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Christopher Intagliata. Leonardo da Vinci's most famous painting also has an optical illusion named for it, the Mona Lisa effect. It's the feeling that the subject of a painting is following you with her gaze.
You continuously feel being looked at, despite moving to the left or moving to the right, perhaps even rotating the picture.
Sebastian Loth is a psychologist at the University of Bielefeld in Germany, and while he doesn't dispute that the illusion itself exists, you've probably also seen it in the Uncle Sam Army recruitment poster, he says there's a problem with the phenomenon's name.
I can show you so many papers where people have literally started their introduction with, we all know that Mona Lisa looks at you, and so on and so forth, and then they would go into their argument, whatever it is. But actually, the specific picture, doesn't look at you.
He and his colleague Gernot Horstmann conducted a scientific investigation of this claim by sitting 24 volunteers in front of a computer screen which displayed various magnifications of the Mona Lisa. They placed rulers at two distances between the subjects and the screen, and then asked the subjects to indicate where on the rulers the Mona Lisa's gaze intersected.
And then you can compute a line, that's basically school mathematics here, and then you can figure out the angle. What came out was 15 degrees to the right.
So the Mona Lisa actually stares over the viewer's right shoulder, he says, not straight out of the canvas, the key to creating her namesake illusion. The write-up is in the journal Eye Perception. Loth says effects like these can have modern implications too. For example, when building virtual assistants on computers, which might need to speak to and make eye contact with more than one person in a room. As for Da Vinci's masterpiece, there's still another illusion that remains, the mysterious ambiguity of the Mona Lisa's smile. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Christopher Intagliata.
This is an important message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. When it snows this winter, make sure you clear more than your driveway. Before you hit the road and before you get in the driver's seat, check to be sure that your vehicle's tailpipe is clear of snow. If the tailpipe is blocked, carbon monoxide, an odorless, colorless, and deadly gas produced by your engine can build up quickly inside your vehicle, poisoning anyone inside. To learn more, call 1-800-CDC-INFO. That's 1-800-232-4636.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
On Election Day 2018, an overwhelming majority of voters in Florida, 65%, approved a state constitutional amendment to restore the right to vote to most people who have been convicted of felonies and completed their sentence. And now, I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. Even though that constitutional amendment, called Amendment 4, was supposed to automatically go into effect on January 8th and allow former felons to register to vote just like everyone else, the new governor, Ron DeSantis, has claimed that Amendment 4 can't take effect until the legislature, which doesn't even meet till March, approves implementing language. Advocates dispute that, pointing to the fact that nothing in the constitutional amendment itself indicates that any legislation is required, although some local election officials who control voter rolls and procedures may be swayed by the governor's statement. In November 2018, more than 5 million Floridians voted in favor of Amendment 4. On that same election day, 1.5 million Floridians, the majority of whom are white and included 23% of the African-American community, were not allowed to vote because of that state's felony disenfranchisement rule that Amendment 4 repealed and reversed. The constitutional amendment and the overwhelming support for it means it's past time, for the right to vote to be honored in the Sunshine State. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
A bombshell of a story dropped late Thursday night, courtesy of Jason Leopold and Anthony Cormier at BuzzFeed. They're reporting that Trump directed his former attorney, Michael Cohen, to lie to Congress about a Trump Tower project in Moscow. Cohen pleaded guilty to lying to Congress. The story also says that Trump asked Cohen to set up a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin to kickstart the project, even as he claimed to not have any business dealings in the country. The BuzzFeed report cites 2 federal law enforcement officials as sources. It has not been independently corroborated by other news outlets or by special counsel Robert Mueller. Just moments after the story broke, shortly after 10 p.m. Eastern, MSNBC's Lawrence O'Donnell was speaking with Jill Wine-Banks, who was a Watergate prosecutor.
This is Michael Cohen giving the special prosecutor his own account of the President of the United States, directing Michael Cohen, while he's president, right from the Oval Office, to lie to Congress. This truly is a Nixonian moment.
This is absolutely one of those moments where you go, when is enough sufficient? This is when it is, because this is exactly the Watergate model of Nixon saying, you can always say, I don't remember, I don't recall, even though you do. That's subornation of perjury, plain and simple. It is a direct act of the president, while he is president, interfering not only with an investigation, but of directly conspiring to obstruct justice. And this should be enough for even and remember, he lied, that is Cohen, he told Cohen to lie to the Senate. Even the Republican Senate is going to have to say, we've been had. We can't have him lying to us. And in the end of Watergate, it was the Republicans who went to Nixon and said, you have to resign or we will convict you in the Senate. And that's going to happen here.
BuzzFeed is now reporting that the House Intelligence Committee will investigate whether Trump ordered Cohen to lie to Congress. Cohen is set to return to Capitol Hill on February 7th. Stay tuned. Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal also has a weird story about Cohen, reporting that Michael Cohen paid a small polling firm to rig 2 online polls in favor of Trump, including one conducted by Matt Drudge. Cohen allegedly paid the director of Redfinch Solutions, LLC, with a Walmart shopping bag that contained at least $12,000 in cash and a boxing glove he said once belonged to a Brazilian mixed martial arts fighter. Cohen tweeted on Thursday that everything he did came under instructions from the president. So earlier this week, Nancy Pelosi sent Donald Trump a letter requesting that, due to security concerns because of the government shutdown, he move his State of the Union address to a later date after the government reopens, or perhaps he should consider delivering a written version of the speech. She added that he could deliver the address from the Oval Office. Trump, thinking that everything is a game, responded by abruptly canceling a long-planned congressional delegation to Brussels and Afghanistan just an hour before they were set to depart. CNN's Jake Tapper explains.
And the president violating decades of security protocols by publicly announcing ahead of time a secret trip to a war zone. A Republican member of Congress telling me just minutes ago that members of Congress are always told never divulge any trip to a war zone until after you have left the war zone. The move by the president was widely interpreted as a response to Pelosi suggesting yesterday a delay or cancellation of the president speaking to a joint session of Congress for the annual State of the Union address, which Pelosi said she was doing because it was unfair to force security agents to work the event without pay. The president kind of tried to borrow that excuse for his cancellation of her trip, writing, quote, "In light of the 800,000 great American workers not receiving pay, I'm sure you would agree that postponing this public relations event is totally appropriate." Now, first off, we should note that President Trump does not claim in that letter that those who would be transporting Pelosi and the congressional delegation are not being paid, because they are being paid. The defense spending bill was passed in 2018. Now, according to a spokeswoman for Speaker Pelosi, she and the delegation were stopping in Belgium and, quote, scheduled to meet with top NATO commanders, U.S. military leaders, and key allies to affirm the United States' commitment to the NATO alliance. In Afghanistan, the spokesman said, quote, "The purpose of the trip was to express appreciation and thanks to our men and women in uniform for their service and dedication, and to obtain critical national security and intelligence briefings from those on the front lines." A White House official tells CNN that Pelosi and members of Congress are welcome to fly commercial to Afghanistan, a remarkable statement given that the president just announced to the world, including the Taliban, that the Speaker of the House was headed there.
In case you were wondering, Trump didn't cancel his wife's flight via military aircraft to Mar-a-Lago in Florida for vacation. Priorities, people, priorities. A new report from the Inspector General of the Department of Homeland Security says the Trump administration may have taken thousands more immigrant children from parents and guardians at the border than was previously known, and it does not know how many families were separated in total. Lovely. And that's a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
From UN headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. When Zimbabweans elected Emerson Mnangagwa as president last year, in the first election not to feature longtime ruler Robert Mugabe, hopes were running high that the country had turned the page on years of failed economic policies and state-directed violence. Those hopes were dashed this week when security forces opened fire on crowds protesting the government's handling of an ongoing fuel crisis. Zimbabwe uses the U.S. dollar, but it's now exhausted its reserves and can't pay to import fuel. Reaching for a short-term fix, Mnangagwa doubled fuel prices last Saturday and then left the country, sparking mass protests. Todd Moss is a senior fellow at the Center for Global Development and says the man running Zimbabwe in Mnangagwa's place has resorted to some familiar tactics to maintain order.
He is a longtime enforcer, the head of the military, and all of the brutal tactics that we're seeing of shooting civilians in the streets, raiding people's homes in the middle of the night. That's all organized by Vice President, former General Chiwenga.
Moss isn't hopeful Zimbabwe's government can or will fix the mess they've created.
It's like a mafia situation where there's a small group that uses their control of the security to enrich themselves. And as they see the economy getting worse, they're like rats on a ship, Everyone is grabbing what they can now in a desperate bid to hold on to what they have.
But instead of writing off Zimbabwe's problems as endemic, Moss says the U.S. and other countries should harness the leverage they still have over the new president.
All of the things he craves from the world, legitimacy, he wants investment, and he's desperate for debt relief from the U.S. and other creditors. They must make absolutely clear to Mnangagwa that all of that is absolutely on the line if he does not rein in the terror that we're seeing unfold today.
Luke Vargas, the United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, because there's lots more of America where we come from. Well, where we are here at the mothership in Southern Oregon, it is currently 38 degrees. It even feels like 38 degrees. We have a light rain, and that will be changing rather quickly. Winds are variable out of the, or light and variable out of the northeast, but we are under an active wind advisory, and in just about an hour to an hour and a half, those winds will then shift out of the east-southeast and increase to a steady 10 to 15 miles per hour with gusts over 50. And we are also in the midst of that. We have a half an inch of rain expected to fall today, with another more than half inch tonight. The winds will decrease to 5 to 10 miles per hour rather than 10 to 15. And tomorrow, we are expecting winds out of the southeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour with an inch and a half of rain. And there's other people up and down the west coast who are getting a lot of rain too, and we'll get to that. Pollen is rated as none. Air quality index is at 34 parts per million in the good range. And the daytime UV index is low at 2, even though visibility is down to 2.4 miles. That's interesting, because it had been at 1, and now it's at 2. Barometric pressure is falling at 29.97 inches. As I mentioned, visibility is at 2.4 miles. Just say 2.5. Damn it. And relative humidity is at 96%. And you would expect it because it's raining. Okay. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchase. These people purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Okay. Just as a reminder, that is my P-tape for anybody who needs a weather forecast in your region. London is 43 and partly cloudy. Paris is 41 and sunny. Rome, or as they like to say there, Roma, is 55 and partly cloudy. Kiev is 37 degrees with light rain. Kabul is 32 degrees with a wintry mix. Oh, that sounds so sedate and lovely. Until the bombs explode. Oh, boy. Hong Kong is 60 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 41 and clear. Oh, they have a weather advisory. Let's see what that might be. Give me a moment now. It just takes a second, fraction of a second. And a dry air advisory. That's got to be pretty bad if they're forecasting dry air. All right, just saying. All right. That was Tokyo. Sydney, Australia is 75 and clear. San Francisco, California is 52 and cloudy with a wind advisory and a flood watch. And New York is 35 degrees Fahrenheit, cloudy, with its own weather advisory of a winter storm watch. So batten down the hatches, button up that top button. Hold on to your hats. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchase. And these people plan to purchase personal weather stations somewhere on their property. And these people positively live around the world. First amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Comes by Reuters and written by Ashita Pali and Munsif Vengatil. Facebook Inc. said yesterday it had removed hundreds of Russia-initiated accounts, which it judged to be involved in coordinated inauthentic behavior on its platforms, including some linked to state-owned news agency Sputnik. In a separate statement, Sputnik attacked the social network for a decision it said was political and amounted to censorship of 7 Facebook pages belonging to its news hubs in neighboring countries. Well, of course it is. Facebook's head of cybersecurity policy, Nathaniel Gallagher, said in a blog post it had unearthed 2 separate operations which originated in Russia, with one active in multiple countries across Eastern Europe and the other specific to the Ukraine. Now, has Sputnik ever been involved in any kind of misinformation campaign? Do you really call that news? You can't even call it comedy. I would give comedy a break in the midst of this. It's not comedy. It is brainwashing, and I don't even believe in brainwashing. People take more responsibility than that. But I will say that folks can be highly suggestible if they get a certain kind of suggestion over and over and over and over and over. You know, embedded in absolutely everything, even from the way that maybe you might buy bread in the morning. If you buy bread in the morning, they'll figure out if you buy bread in the evening, and they'll get you there too. I'm just saying. The social media company said it had taken down about 364 Facebook pages and accounts operating in Baltic Sea states, Central Asia, the Caucasus, and parts of Europe, and that the pages were linked to employees of Sputnik. So I suppose the First Amendment, freedom of the press, could come into play here, because what if a hostile foreign power decided to be Facebook? And they have a monopoly in how messages get out. Or even how you might be able to message your friends and family. Just saying. But Sputnik, they're not news. Despite their misrepresentations of their identities, we found that these pages and accounts were linked to employees of Sputnik, wrote. I like to do the guttural. I hope you don't mind. It doesn't go over so well on the microphone. Some of the pages frequently posted about topics like anti-NATO sentiment, protest movements, and anti-corruption. Well, those are, I don't know, the anti-NATO sentiment. I got to tell you, even though you might have called me a peacenik back in the day, I also understood that you can't just be a romantic about it without maybe at least learning how to string a bow to protect whatever rum you might be protecting, and you should. Facebook has been under fire the last 2 years for its self-admitted sluggishness in developing tools to combat extremist content and propaganda operations. And also, I think you would say actually taking money and having an active participation and, suggesting to people over and over and over and over and over about emails, Benghazi, and lock her up.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
This last amuse-bouche comes our way by way of Reuters, written by Kirsty Knoll. Dateline Vienna. Apple and Amazon are among 8 tech firms named in a complaint filed in Austria by non-profit organization Neub, which cited their failure to comply with the EU's General Data Protection Regulation. The action by Neub, chaired by data privacy activist Max Schrems, also named Netflix, Spotify, and YouTube, after it tested them by requesting private data the companies hold about the user. No service fully complied, Neub said in a statement. In other words, they're just so willing to sell the data that you are you. We all know we're the product, okay? We're not the customer. We're the product. The initiative was implemented in May and gives users the right to access their data and information about the sources and receipts of the data. Social networks must regain Europeans' consent every time they want to use their data in ways, including for targeted advertising. Neub said it filed its complaints with the Austrian authority on behalf of 10 users. The Austrian watchdog would have to work with its counterparts at the streaming service's main establishments. Schrems is a veteran privacy campaigner who took his first legal action against Facebook as a student in 2011. Now a lawyer, Schrems, which means he actually finished school and Zuckerberg didn't. Schrems filed complaints last year against Google, Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, arguing they were acting illegally by forcing users to accept intrusive terms of service or lose access. Well, we've already been signing non-binding arbitration agreements just to be able to flip a burger, and non-competitive clauses too. We've been primed for it, haven't we? Almost like we've been suggested by it over and over and over. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week. But you know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on 24/7 all the way through the weekend. We'll meet up on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day, all night, all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up right here on Monday in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent voir un latte goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie d'un novembre. Tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.